guys
Notice who's up front here. The fire guys are up front. Right?
Oh, okay, so in mental.
Oh, there you are. You are. I see you. Yeah, well, he's got his fire badge on. Okay, anyway. My name is Wes Bennett. I'm fortunate and I have the honor and privilege to be the Commissioner of the Department of Local Government Finance. Besides Representative Brown, who else heard of the DLGF? Excellent. Okay, tell me one thing that we do, Kevin.
You guys investigate people who take money from out of their coffers.
That is the State Board of Accounts.
Certified budgets.
Certified budgets.
Budgets, there you go.
I forgot.
That's okay, that's okay, that's, well, we won't go there. So, the State Board of Accounts is one of our sister agencies, and I'm gonna go over that with you in just a second. But we have, as the DLGF is a oversight agency similar to the State Board of Accounts. The State Board of Accounts is on the fiscal side. They handle chart of accounts, they handle the auditing of money. Your county auditors, your clerk treasurers, your townships, every form of local government is going to be involved at some point in time, and you including will be involved in the State Board of Accounts. The DLGF on the budget side certifies your budgets. And I believe, I couldn't get the final number as of today, but tomorrow we will have certified close to half of all the counties and the local units in those counties, your budgets, by our statutory deadline of 12/31. Are you aware, have you received your certified budgets yet? So I know that you're not in office yet, right? Okay. So I understand that, but I know my friend over here, Mr. Cox from Hendricks County, my favorite county. You know the DLGF, don't you? So, as a former town council member of the town of Avon, he was be aware of Avon receiving their certified budget. So we do budgets. What else does the DLGF do? Anybody? Assessments. Okay? We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. We also have a legal division that's my attorney, not yours, my attorney. I have a communications division, I have an IT division, and I also have a data division. So I have 5 divisions within the DLGF. So let me get started here. My presentation is going to cover what you see up here. If I get people way up and back off here. So we're going to talk a little bit about Office of Management Budget. I want to give you a perspective there. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the mission of the values of the DLGF, go over some expectations, talk about a few initiatives, and then we're going to get into a combination of high level, medium level, and ground level discussion. And I want this to be a discussion, so if you have any questions, if you're not sure about something, don't hesitate to stop. I don't have a problem stopping in the middle of anything and answering your questions. If you want to pull me aside at the end, I'd be glad to have a conversation with you here. First question, okay? You do not. You do not. There's a reason for that. As a former clerk treasurer, see you, Mr. Berry. It's always intimidating when you have a former auditor of state in the room watching your presentations. Just tell you a quick story. One of the first things I did in office, I got into office in August of '05, came into a situation that I was totally unfamiliar with. Right at right at the end of the budget process in August, so it was kind of in the middle to the end, and got through that process, and I'll tell you a little story about that in a few minutes. But my point here is about the paper. Is we got to the end of the budget cycle for 2005, and we were scraping for dollars. And I put a moratorium on the ordering of paper. I said no more ordering of paper. You wouldn't believe the police and fire went crazy. What are we going to do? Okay, we worked it out. But the point of the matter is we'll make this presentation available. I've already sent it to Jack and AIC. We'll put it up on our website. You guys don't mind. Okay, to know those guys. I want them on my back. So anyway, we've got some handouts. I think everybody should have one. If you don't, I've got a few extras up here. So I kind of frown on, I kind of try to avoid printing out. My presentation is about 50 slides. It would have taken about 10 copies, 10 pages front and back, and times that I just didn't go there. So anyway, but thanks for the question. And then, I'm sure that you all have your reasons for why you're doing what you're doing, what you do every day, why you get out of bed. Here are two of mine, Jackson and Parker. And they're one of the reasons I get out of bed and do what I do. Office of Management Budget came into existence under Governor Daniels back in his administration. As you probably remember, he was the OMB director for the federal government. Kind of brought the same organization to the state level. You'll see two organizations off to the left. One of those is the State Board of Accounts. And even though that they don't report directly to OMB, they are part of what they call independent but collaborative with the OMB. So we consider them a sister agency. Impress, the Indiana Public Retirement System, is also a collaborative partner under OMB. And those are two agencies that you will deal with, okay? And the auditors and the assessors will deal with some of these others as well, county commissioners. So as a county official, city or town official, doesn't matter, you're going to deal with some of these folks. IFA, the Indiana Finance Authority, is another agency that you're going to hear about at some point in time during your tenure. Our Office of Technology, MPH, Performance Hub, Management Performance Hub, that's an agency that helps local state agencies, and it will help also local government if asked. State Budget Agency, Department of Revenue is another agency that you'll deal with, you're going to hear about as well. There's the DLGF, and then there's the IBTR, the Indiana Board of Tax Review. Back about the same time that this was established, Representative Brown, you probably know this very well. You were involved with this, right? When they split the tax board into two entities, the DLGF and the Indiana Board of Tax Review. That Indiana Board of Tax Review is the agency that will hear the assessment challenges that are done at the local level that the PETA-BOA board has made a determination on, and if the taxpayer is not in liking to that PETA-BOA, then they can push it up to the IBTR before it goes to the tax court. And then you have a new agency here, relatively new over the last couple of years. My predecessor is now the executive director of the Distressed Student Appeals Board, Cody Stossma, and I am also a board member of the Distressed Student Appeals Board. So that kind of gives you an org chart of the Office of Management Budget and how we relate to each other. Some of the goals for OMB are to be accurate, efficient, to be competitive, and to be taxpayer focused. Okay, nothing earth-shattering here. So we want to make sure that we modernize our systems. This is a challenge that you will face at the local level as well, is upgrading and enhancing your systems and your processes. You'll hear a lot about over the course of your tenure about the processes. One of those will be internal controls. That's been some buzzwords from the State Board of Accounts over the last 4 or 5 years. We want to make sure as state agencies that we leverage data, and we leverage good data, and that's going to be critical to you as well, that you leverage data at the county level. We keep score. We measure ourselves, and we measure performance of our colleagues, our peers, and our staff. It's very important that we keep score and understand where we're at. And then we want to maximize assets. Okay, we want to maximize the taxpayers' assets. From a competitive standpoint, we want to make sure that we maintain our AAA bond rating at the state level. We want to make sure that we have healthy reserves. And then we also want to make sure that we have a stable and neutral tax base along with a predictable and transparent tax system. And then from the taxpayers' focus standpoint, we want to make sure we communicate with all stakeholders. Everyone in this room knows how important good communication and good communication skills are. Your success, my success, our success depends on how well we communicate, okay? How well you communicate with your colleagues, how well you communicate with your department heads, all the way down to the guy that pushes the snow, or the woman that handles the animals at the animal control or animal shelter, or regardless of the employee and what level they're at. It's good communication skills with all stakeholders. That includes taxpayers. My staff is not allowed to run away from a taxpayer. Taxpayer calls, we take their call. They email, we take their email. Okay? We are focused on customer service all times. Okay? And again, that is with our decisions and policies have an eye towards the taxpayer. Excuse me. I'm a little cold here, so I hope I don't get one of those coughing hacks that I had a couple hours ago. The mission of the department is to put the taxpayer first, respect local control, and to make sure that we excel in everything that we do, whether it's answering the phone, whether it's getting back to you in a timely manner, whether it's giving you, answering your questions, whether it's providing service to any stakeholder. We want to excel in everything we do. And when I say respect local control, I don't necessarily mean that we push everything back to you that you want from us, okay? But there are times where I'm going to have to say, you're going to have to work that out yourself. There are times that I'm going to be able to say, I'll help, I'm in a position to help you, right? Okay? Got a few examples, but we've got limited time. So, is Jackie in the room, by the way? Oh, never mind, I'll set my, I have a tendency to run long, so I'm going to set my alarm here. But we have an hour, right? So somebody tell me when it's 11:20 or 1:25, please. 1:25. Thank you. I have a whiteboard up in my office. First day I came in, I put 4 basically principles, call them pillars, whatever you want to call them, but 4 basic tenets of what I want us to accomplish both at the DLGF and from a local elected official's perspective. As a former elected official and someone that was a CFO for a pretty large town, I had to keep it simple because it does get complicated. So these are very simple. The first one is being on time. And these are expectations for me, my staff, for everyone involved. The Indiana Code has specific deadlines. When I raised my right hand and solemnly swore, I swore to be on time. I swore to follow the Constitution and the laws of the state of Indiana and the town of Plainfield. You're going to do the same thing here. Some of you have already done that before, so you know where I'm coming from. Okay? When you raise that right hand and solemnly swear, you're committing yourself to be on time. And when I say ratio studies, the assessors will get that. Do we have any other? This is all county council members, right? Do we have any other elected officials? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm an auditor.
You're an auditor. You've heard this before, haven't you? Okay. Same this year as it was last year. We committed ourselves to be on time with whatever we are statutorily required to do. Everyone's expected to be. Be accurate. It's not one or the other. And someone tell me, well, do you want it to be accurate or do you want it to be on time? Both. That's what I committed to. That's what we committed to. Accurate and on time. Reported. Okay, guidance and instructions, policy and code. So it doesn't matter where we're at. It's incumbent upon us to be accurate. It's incumbent upon me and my staff to help you in an accurate and on-time manner. It's incumbent upon me, and I committed myself, and by the way, I took an oath when I took this job as well. Same oath that I took before. Professional service. I've been in the service industry my whole life, my whole career. Between banking, insurance, retail, there were some jobs that I had that if I didn't provide professional service, I didn't get paid. Okay? So, this has been my mantra, and this is how I've been able to succeed, is providing professional service. It's incumbent upon all of us to to do that, okay? And then the fourth, and it's just as important and probably is as controversial as they come, and probably not in this room, but with some of your colleagues, is, and I'm talking about cities and towns and townships and libraries, and when I say all of us, I'm not just talking about county council. Continuing education and training. If I were king, this would be mandatory. Mandatory. Okay? You'd have to bring something to the table to get out of it. Okay? Attorneys, assessors, CPAs, you name it, real estate agents, coroners, all are required to have continuing education to the tune of anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a year. Okay? You're required to do 0. Okay? So, I encourage you to take this seriously because there, as you will see from the handouts, and we're not going to go over those line for line, but those are chart of accounts, those are funds that you will be in charge of, that you will be making appropriations from or for. There is a lot to know. You're not going to learn all of it today. You're not going to learn all of it in the next year, okay? But you've got to eat that elephant one bite at a time. And continuing education and training is going to help you go a long way in doing your job. I want to talk about a few initiatives from the DLGF that have both a direct and indirect effect on you, and I'll go through them here real quick. Online personal property reporting. Currently, right now, the state has no online portal for taxpayers to report personal property. Okay, that's these tables, these chairs, everything that's inside this building. Okay, it's all done by paper. Okay, the governor's, one of the governor's initiatives that we proposed, my predecessor proposed 2 years ago that I am fortunate enough to be able to carry the ball forward on, is to develop an online portal for reporting personal property. This is going to be a tremendous help for the county assessors. It's going to be able to leverage their resources in a different area where they need. I hope that you don't take money away from them because they don't have this to do anymore, because they will have some paper to do. But they need to do other things now that we've changed the assessment cycle and we've changed a little bit of the assessment process. They need to do other things that they're not being able to do now because of this. So we're going to help them, it's going to help the state, it's going to help the taxpayer. Input has been positive from all stakeholders. It's going to reduce time, paperwork, it's going to reduce the amount of time to file. I think that we're going to be able to pay for this, the users. We're talking about a user fee to take care of this. So very, very positive. Yes, sir.
What's the time frame on this?
Yeah, so we anticipate the RFI, the time period has expired. We're developing the RFP now. And so we hope that by 1/1 of 21, we'll roll it out. We only have one shot to do it right. And we can't afford to take $3 million and not do it right. So we're going to take our time. We're going to involve a lot of stakeholders. We're going to make sure that all the elected officials, the Indiana Manufacturers Association, all the utilities, Duke Energy, NIPSCO, all those folks are involved because they're the big filers. And so we have to develop a system that's going to be able to handle a Duke Energy or the mom and pop store that has $25,000 worth of personal goods. So we have to develop a very comprehensive system. It's going to take a while. Yes, sir.
The user fee will be paid by the user or the county?
End user. It's not set in stone, but that's the plan. Okay? Yeah, so it will be user-based, and we're still working through it. So we're still early, still are in the process. This was handed to me last year. It was kind of late in the cycle of when we were trying to tee this up for legislation, because there is some enabling legislation that needs to take place, and we didn't. So we knew that this was going to be a budget year, so it made more sense to kind of delay it for a year to the budget session. Yes, sir.
Is there any plan to cycle out some of those like hairdressers and things like that that have 500,000, 700,000?
Sure. Well, right now there is a if you are under $20,000, you have an exemption. You You have to file, but you have to say that you have less than 20.
Yes, but you still have to talk.
You still have to file.
So there's no thought with it. Because I know the assessor, when I spoke there, they file a lot of those. It's a lot of different paperwork.
Yeah, and we think that's gonna eliminate it for the assessor side, and it'll be simply checking a box on the hairdresser side. Get online, check a box. This is also going to be information that we can share internally. We're certainly gonna have to make this secure. Information that they're filing is proprietary, confidential. But we also want to know if that hairdresser is still in business for other reasons that the DOR or the Secretary of State or any other state agency that may need to know. Okay? So I can't answer specifically, but my guess is that we will start with everybody, and then depending on how it works, we might get to the hairdresser that only has $1,000. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Any states do this already?
You know, I was asked that the other day, and I think there are, but I can't tell you who they are. But I think there are several states that do this. I think North Carolina's one. I think Alabama's another one. And so
That code's been cracked.
pardon me?
That code's been cracked.
Yes, I think so too. Good question. I need to find that out. Anybody else? All right. Sales disclosure form, SDS, sales disclosure form. This is an initiative as a result of collaboration and discussion, communication with the assessor's office and other stakeholders, the auditor's office as well. We have a dated form, and so we have a committee of stakeholders that has started to develop a new sales disclosure form. Cyclical reassessment, we're in the second 4-year cycle. The first cycle went very well. I don't want to dwell on this too long, but I want to emphasize the need for both county commissioners and county council members to understand what's going on in your assessor's office. This is the tip of the spear when it comes to what's the budget process, establishing good practices and establishing proper and accurate assessed values. And this office is critical to the success of not only the county, but every local unit in the county. If that office is not operating and performing at high levels, if it's not funded at proper levels, and it's going to vary from county to county, it's going to trickle down. Okay, and that's all I can say about it at this time, because we can spend all day talking about the assessment process and how that works. So put that in the back of your mind. Spend some time with your county assessor, not just once a year, but maybe once a quarter. You know, spend a couple hours with him or her. As I said earlier, the department oversees this process. We do it at a mathematical level. The county assessor does it on the ground level. Okay? And that's how I can quickly sum that up. Okay? We do it at a mathematical level. They send us all these ratio studies. They send us the sales disclosures, the ratio studies. We do a mathematical calculation to see if it fits within certain parameters. We do not get down to the partial level. Okay? That's his or her job. That's the PWO's job. And there is an appeal process if the taxpayer is not happy with their assessment of their individual real property and the improvements on that real property. Okay? We do not get involved with the taxpayer appeal. However, if we feel, and ultimately I feel that the assessment that they are sending to us is a flaw or two, we will then be able to peel the onion back a little bit and maybe look at it at more of a ground level. But we're looking at it at a high level, they're looking at the ground level, and then we go from there.
But how often do you do that with 92 counties?
Every year, Representative Brown, they do a ratio study, they do trending every year. They only do 25% of the parcels each year at the ground level. They take those 25%, those 25 out of 100 parcels, and then they trend the other 75.
So is there an appeal process above the PETA board?
Yes, that's the IBTR. If you as a taxpayer are not happy with the PETA board's decision, you can appeal to the PETA or the IBTR, the United Board of Tax Review. It's right there next to my office on the 10th floor in the north office building. And at that point, they schedule a hearing. I think they have like 3 or 4 months to schedule a hearing. You go, you state your case to them. You can do it per se. I mean, if you're the taxpayer and you don't want to hire anybody, you can do it on your own, or you can hire somebody to come in and speak for you. If you don't like their decision, you can go to the tax court.
But how would John Q. Citizen know about these levels?
They're notified. They have to be notified at the local level. The county assessor and the PETA board will notify them at the time of the PETA hearing. If you're not happy with this, here's your next recourse. And here's your recourse after that and after that. Good question. Okay. Legislative session, House Bill 1104 didn't make it across the finish line last year. We're planning on doing it this year, so we've got several initiatives from last year that we're adding to this year's initiative. You can see here's a short list of, it's not a long list anyway, but we want to make sure that we have proper budgeting and rulemaking authority like we do on the assessment side. GIS coordinator, current statute reads that it's the county assessor. That doesn't work in Hendricks County because the county assessor, we have a separate county assessor, or I mean a separate person that does GIS. So we want to just give you the flexibility to appoint your own GIS coordinator at the local level. So we have several technical corrections, and we'll be pushing that out. We've had several discussions with Dave and Ryan and staff here at AIC about our legislative agenda, theirs, and so we're also communicating, having a phone call at least every week starting out to make sure that we're all in sync with what's going on. We need to catch anything, we need to talk about anything. Question in the back.
I don't know, I thought you were going to switch slides. What's the issue with residential property and TIF?
Residential property in TIF area, couple things, 2 things. Since the inception of the tax caps, the definition of residential property is different in the tax cap part of the code versus the TIF part of the code. So we need to put those 2 in sync. Okay. The second part is we have some software vendors that are treating residential property and TIF differently than other software vendors. We need to get that figured out. And very simple, but it is complex because if you have residential on the TIF, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on TIF and residential property, but for those in the room that are familiar with TIF, most of the time you don't count residential value as part of the TIF value. It stays in the base, gets passed through the other overlapping taxing districts, and you shouldn't be putting in the AV for the TIF increment. You should be keeping it separate. So we want to make, again, just clean up stuff. It's from a fiscal standpoint, it is, what's the term they use? It's immaterial, but it's still not being done correctly. Okay? Does that answer your question? We are wrapping up an initiative with the Auditor of State's Office, a Gateway Initiative, where the abstract is being put electronically on the gateway rather than being done on paper. Okay, so again, the auditors, if there's any auditors in the room, hopefully they're clapping, right? Gateway abstract, are you clapping?
Well, it's the way it is, we're gonna do it that way.
I think it'll be much better.
We used to actually have a sheet of paper about this long and this wide. And it was a complete abstract of the way the taxes would look at the end of the year. We predicted that in March. And instead of doing it on paper, we had couple different iterations of spreadsheets, and now they have a portal for us. But let me address that TIF question, because I think I can help you out here,
Sure.
since it's a different little group. So TIF is tax incremental financing. And what it means, say if you have a group of 100 homes in a certain area, and that becomes a TIF district. Any growth in that TIF district That's not normal growth from trending that he talked about, but additional growth, like new houses or a new business. That growth, that AV growth, is captured, so it's incremental financing, tax incremental financing. That growth is then used, is set aside the extra taxes for a special project. I think simplistic is the way to go here, because I think that's questioning. So what happens is it doesn't raise the person's taxes. Like if my house is worth $100,000 and I'm in a TIF district, if my taxes go up $50 because trending went up $50, that still goes to the regular base. But if I build a garage or an outbuilding and it goes up, or a pool, it goes up because of that, that money is captured. The taxes for that money is captured for the new project. I think that's what he was asking.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Ag base rate, and again, in conversations with your local fiscal officers and assessors, moving the date in which we supply this information to the local counties was critical for them to being accurate and on time. In talking with Dr. DeBoer from Purdue and talking with Farm Bureau folks, we all worked together and figured out that we get this out by December 31st instead of later on in January or February, which has been a traditional point in time. We provided this information. It was going to make everybody's life easier and better. So that's another initiative that we are just, and we're looking next week to put out that ag base rate for the first time in December. Each one of you will have the opportunity to be on our listserv. If you would email me your new email address, I will forward that to my communications director, and she will include you on the weekly emails that you get. At the bottom of that weekly email will be my signature, and we'll have a link. And we'd like to get feedback from you, positive, negative, or in between, any kind of feedback. Okay, so you're going to be able to do online surveys. You're going to be able to get listserv information from us. I know AIC has listservs as well, and I would encourage you to get on those. Budget certification by 12/31. This is the big lift for the agency this year. And again, I'll harken back to 12 years ago when I was learning the budget process on the public side. I knew the private side pretty well, but it's different on this side. And I was always confused, and I always complained, because I like to complain a lot back then, because I like to pick on the state. And I said, why are we getting our budgets in March and April? I mean, I'm through the first quarter, and I'm just not getting my first budget. So, through the course of my career, I got to tell a few legislators, and they made it happen, and now I have to make it happen. So, be careful what you ask for, right? Be careful what you ask for. 6 months or 6 weeks earlier than usual, your timeline did not change at all. Mine did. There's also new funds and new rules for schools and funding, which is important to them and that they're real happy about. But we've also having to change the mindsets of thousands of elected and appointed officials, because we're looking at trying to get you to move up your calendar and not wait till November, the absolute deadline, to adopt your budget. So we're hoping that we will slowly change the mindset of local officials that wait until the last minute. All right, let's talk budgets. Okay, that's what you're here for. Webster defines it as an estimate. I keep getting your way. It's an estimate. And it's an estimate of income. And I think they put that word in there first for a reason. I'm glad they do, because that's one thing that I think as a fiscal officer and as people that are involved with budgets forget about, or they don't deal with as much as they do the expenditure side. Don't forget this income side of the ledger, okay? It's easy for the department heads to do that, because they're not involved with income. They don't generate income. The highway department doesn't collect fees and so forth. The auditor does, or it comes from the state. So the departments are not clued into the income side. So we need to educate them on the income side. but it's an estimate of income and expenditures for a set period of time. And it's an estimate, okay? It's a plan, it's a forecast. You can look at all sorts of definitions for budget. Another one here is businessdictionary.com. Again, estimate, okay? It also reflects the future conditions and goals. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that. Regardless of who you talk to, according to whoever you talk to, it's one of the most important administrative tools that you will deal with. A budget serves as a plan of action for achieving quantified objectives. Remember I talked about keeping score? Talking about quantifying your objectives. If you set a budget and that budget doesn't somehow get you from point A to point B, I would look at that over again, okay? It's a standard for measuring performance. This is another thing that we don't do very well, in all honesty, okay? We don't measure our performance, okay? I know that's tough sometimes, but we need to measure our performance. We're not gonna get better unless we know where we need to get better at, okay? And it's also a device for coping with unforeseeable adverse conditions, and believe you me, folks, you will run into those. You will run into those. Ask the mayor of Kokomo. Okay? Ask anybody that's been at this long enough. You will have to deal with weather. You'll have to deal with staff. You'll have to deal with judges. Any judges on there? Right, Dave? So, adverse conditions. Some of the key players, obviously your county departments. I mean, those folks, I know the folks that I've met in the 48 plus counties that I've visited in the year that I've been in office, not only meeting with elected officials, but with some of the staff. These folks are passionate. They want to own it. They want to do the job right. It's our job to give them the tools. So they are critical to our success. We need to give them the tools, and part of that is the continuing education and training on how to properly budget. Obviously, your county auditor, he or she, mostly she's, but some he's, that's your chief fiscal officer. That's your CFO. Okay? And you need to look at them as a CFO. Because you are a multi-million-dollar organization. It's not chump change. Okay? Every one of these funds that's on this handout has got money in it. And ask your auditor for a cash balance on their chart of accounts. And don't worry about what's in each fund. Look at the bottom first. You remember what yours is? Okay. I didn't look at it too much. One of the first things is when I got into office, I said, I don't even know what questions to ask. So I was asking my fiscal advisor, what questions should I ask? I was asking my controller, what information should I know? One of the first things they gave me was the chart of accounts, which I gave you. Okay? I'm not trying to do the auditor's job, but again, some of you don't know what to ask. Okay? And then they said, here's our cash balances, and they can give you cash balances as of whatever date you want. Should be able to. Take a look at the cash balances as of 12/31 of 18 in your account. Okay? Go to the end of the chart, or go to the end of the cash balance report, and look at that total in the bottom right-hand corner. Look at the total in the left-hand corner. The left-hand corner at the bottom is the amount that you started with January 1. The amount in the bottom right-hand corner is the amount that you ended up on December 31st. And then in between are your ins and your outs. And hopefully that number in the bottom right-hand corner is at or slightly above the bottom left-hand corner. Okay? If it's not, don't panic. Okay? Because It's not that way every year, it's not positive every year. But you certainly don't want to see a big differential between what you started and what you ended with. Okay, that's where you start, that's at the macro level, okay? Then as you go back up the chart, you want to look for red on the right-hand side, okay? Anything negative. If you've got a fund in the negative, you need to ask why. There could be a good reason. There could be a very good reason, okay? Especially with grants. Grants are reimbursable, they're always going to be negative. Most always going to be negative, okay? You got to spend the money before you get it, right? So, just a few tips, okay? But the big point is you are a multi-million-dollar organization. And you need to have qualified people helping you run that organization. You can't do it by yourself. Wes Bennett could not be the only fiscal officer for the town of Plainfield. And your auditor can't be the only person doing the fiscal part. So keep that in mind. County treasurer is important. Obviously, your county commissioners and you folks are critical, okay? And I gotta tell you, up right up front, your relationship with your county commissioners is gonna be critical to your success as well, okay? We know that the constitutional offices, prosecutor, clerk, surveyor, sheriff, circuit court judge, and then the others are established by state statute or ordinance by the county commissioners. Believe it or not, the assessor is not a constitutional office. Coroner is not a constitutional office. So, just to name a few, and again, I don't know everything about county fiscals because they are much more diverse than cities and towns. And you can tell this chart of accounts is massive. Tell you a little bit about what the county auditor does. And I know this is going to be news to some of you, and some of you it won't be. But basically, the chief fiscal officer issues checks, pays the bills. Okay, that's what he or she does. They also track the budgets, both expenditures and revenues. They prepare the annual fiscal reports, and believe me, they're getting more and more of those. Okay, when I came into office, there was one. Now there's at least 4 or 5. They provide the taxing units with the assessed values. So all the cities and towns, the townships, what those assessed values are critical information to them. They also provide the tax revenue estimates, lit, property tax, wheel and surtax, excise tax, et cetera, et cetera. They also help prepare the abstract using the tax rates that we provide them from the DLGF. I only went to 2 slides for the auditor. I could have gone to 4 or 5. There are that many responsibilities. But payroll, W-2s, 1099s, okay? Anything to do with payroll, including time and attendance, okay? And we can have a sidebar discussion about time and attendance, okay? Time and attendance. They calculate rebates, tip calculations, they work with the auditor of state, they work with the DLGF, they work with the State Board of Accounts, they work with the Department of Revenue. This office, you know, I say between the auditor and the assessor, those 2 offices, and they're all critical, don't get me wrong. The health department is critical. The sheriff's department is critical. All the offices of the county are critical. But again, those 2 offices are the tip of the spear when it comes to making sure that everybody else functions well and is properly funded. Assessor's office. This is probably one of the most misunderstood and least understood offices of county government. They are responsible for accurately and uniformly determining the market value and use of every property in the county. And I usually don't like to read my slides verbatim, but that is how simple they are. It's just that simple, but yet it's not. Every piece of real property, with or without improvements, every piece of personal property is the responsibility of the assessor's office. Okay? If they're not doing their job, or if they're hindered from doing their job, again, I can't emphasize enough how that has a trickle-down effect, a waterfall effect, not a trickle-down, it's a waterfall effect on every local unit of government. They achieve their job by using 3 approaches to assessment. You can see the cost, income, and sales comparison. And we require that the state level annual adjustments of assessments to reflect changes in the market. I talked about the cyclical reassessment and the trending of the other, the cyclical reassessment of 25 and the trending of the other 75. And so they'll split the county in quarters. They'll do a quarter this year, they'll do the second quarter next year, they'll just do that cycle in a 4-year cycle, okay? So that's how everybody gets trended, but yet everybody gets touched at least once every 4 years. That doesn't mean they can't be touched every year, because they can, okay? We all know, I think most of us know, we all know now that the county commissioners are the legislative body. They audit and authorize claims, they receive and authorize bids. They're also supervise the construction, operation, or management of your road infrastructure. They're allowed to issue debt in cooperation with the county council. There's a dual role there for both of you, for both the commissioners and the council when it comes to issuing debt. I wouldn't necessarily call it a check and balance, but there's a dual role there. Along with the county treasurer, the 3 members, commissioners, are part of the Board of Finance. And they're able to establish parks. They assist with the CMHC centers. They're responsible for maintaining the courthouse, offices, jail, appointments, zoning and planning, etc. We'll get down to county council. They adopt the annual budget. They fix the tax rate based on the budget and the levy. They make appropriations, okay? Seems to be, hopefully I've cleared it up, but a year ago there seems to be some confusion among at least a couple counties that commissioners wanted to make appropriations. Commissioners cannot make appropriations, okay? They can request them, and then they can spend what you authorize them to, what you appropriate them to spend, but they cannot make appropriations. You make the appropriations. They're the legislative body of the county. County councils impose tax levies, lit, wheel surtax, excise tax, just to name a few. There could be there could be the innkeeper's tax, food and beverage tax, some other things that if you have statutory authority to do as a county, the county council will have that responsibility. You also have the tremendous responsibility of fixing salaries, wages, and benefits. So that kind of sums up, again, very general, your responsibilities and some of the other key players. What do you need to consider when it comes to budgets? And I put revenue first, as you know, because I think that's overlooked. But you need to look at revenue in at least these 5 categories: property taxes, income, excise, food and beverage, and then service fees, fines, penalties, anything else that you have the authority to do statutorily to raise revenue if you so desire to do that. Some other budget considerations. You're going to be dealing with budgets on a myriad. Again, I refer you back to the fund descriptions and your chart of accounts, which is the number. Oops. You will be looking at budget on dozens of funds. So you can see a list, very short list here. Legal expenses, wages and benefits. And don't be surprised if you see that 70 to 80% of your expenditures are in the wages, benefits, and salaries. Okay, it's not uncommon. If you're below 70, you might be underpaying folks, to be honest with you. Just saying. I'd have to look at it, but if you're under 70%, you may not be in the market. Other expenditures, grants. It's probably one of the most underlooked, probably misunderstood about how to budget grants, and we can talk specifically about that. But grants, you need to understand that you're going to be asked to fund a lot of grants, okay? Or at least partial funding for grants applications. Parks, capital projects, Some of you have airports. I put PETA-BO up here. The PETA-BO board on its own is not necessarily a very high expenditure. But if a very large taxpayer comes in and appeals, and they make a decision in favor of the taxpayer, that's going to have an effect on your AV, which is going to have an effect on your tax rate, which is going to have an effect on your circuit breakers, which is going to have an effect on your levy. Okay, and that's a lot to unpack. But in essence, what I just said was you're going to lose money. You're going to lose revenue. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Do you know the status of the big box stores that want the assessment of the old?
It's being heard this week or next at the IBTR.
Gotcha.
Is my time
No,
up?
you're right on your time, I'm just wanting to make sure you know it's getting close.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right, so, slide them on. Here's some other factors that you're going to be dealing with: public-private partnerships. You're going to be dealing with circuit breakers and tax caps. You're going to be dealing with outsourcing and contracting services. You're going to be dealing with hearing about either expanding or diminishing AVs, assessed values. You're going to be needing to learn about economic tools such as TIF, abatements, interlocal agreements, and MOUs. Okay, lot to learn. Okay, the budget process. There's 7 of them listed here, and I could list 10 more. Okay, I'm going to talk just about a couple because I really think that we don't want to complicate the budget process. We really want to enhance it and to get the most out of it.
It's
But-
125.
Huh?
125.
Thank you. Okay. Can I go over 5 minutes, Jackie?
Can you go over 5 minutes?
Yeah.
4.
4 minutes. All right. So line item budgeting is the most common form of budgeting that I see at the local level. Okay. It's the easiest to learn. The chart of accounts corresponds with the expenses, and most budget processes do. But it's simple but effective accounting, and it allows for good internal control. So there's some good reasons to do line item budgeting. The other one that I like, and I adapted both zero-based budgeting and line item budgeting when I was at the town of Plainfield, and I can go through specifics on the side or at a later time. But I like zero-based budgeting because you start from zero every year. Okay? The quick story: my first budget hearing, but work session. I'm sitting there as the new clerk treasurer. Department head comes in and sets down a piece of paper to the town council in the work session and says, "This is a 2% increase over last year." Go sits down. No discussion about why she needed this, or I don't need this, but I need this. No discussion about what vendors we need to use and why. So don't misunderstand. I don't want to drag this out over months and months and months because it already does anyway. But don't let somebody get away with, well, I spent $1,000 this year and I needed $1,100 next year without some justification or reason. Target-based budgeting attempts to simplify the process, moves money based on priorities set by policy makers. Again, you can use any level of these budget processes, and I would encourage you to either use both the resources that AIC has, in addition to the ICMA, the International Cities and Counties Management Association, ICMA. You've been around long enough, you've probably heard of them. They have a book out that goes over all these processes. But so you can look at performance budgeting, and it moves the process from the accounting to a broader financial focus that's determined by management. Okay, there's some good reasons to do some of your budgets in this manner, or some of your fund budgets in this manner. It's a great way to keep score. Program budgeting. I think this is a good method for your grants and your minor non-reverting funds. Your DUI fund, your bulletproof vest fund, the funds that you spend every year that you get 50 cents on the dollar through grant money. Okay, I think the program budgeting is, it's focused on outcomes only. Okay, there's not really in this particular method, there's no focus on whether the program is necessary or not, okay? Budgeting for outcomes. This is more or less the priority-based budgeting. What are our priorities? Is our priority to fix X number of bridges? Is our priority to fix our courthouse? Is our priority to increase the capacity at our jail? What are our priorities, okay? Now, I would say the budgeting for the 21st century blends multiple processes. You're a diverse county. You have diverse needs, you have diverse wants, you have diverse requirements. Okay? I don't think you could use just one type of budgeting process and be successful. So look at blending the multiple different ways in which you can budget. But you need to make sure you have a good philosophy, you have good priorities, you measure performance, that you understand that there are enhancement packages out there. Make sure that you understand and try to forecast new spending initiatives, and don't forget your revenue. Real quickly, I'm about to wrap up here. This process is a multi-month process. My staff and I started in February, worked through March and April. In May, we provided the budget documents to our department heads and gave them 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, they returned it to my office, and me and the town manager would take the next 6 weeks and go over it with them line for line, vendor for vendor. Believe me, vendor for vendor, line for line. Okay? We would then move into the work session stage with the town council members, and by the time we got to September, we had it worked out. We were adopting in October, submitting it to the DLGF, and done. Okay? But it's a multi-month process. Okay? Not everyone's involved through that whole process. Okay? With the exception of the fiscal officer and maybe the county administrator. Remember, it's an art and a science. It's never exact, but it should be as precise as possible. And keep in mind that it's ever changing. Okay? Some best practices: set a calendar, set a timeline. We want to, and again, you're going to need to talk to your colleague. We want to adopt our budget by X. Work backwards to when you need to start. Make your calendar and stick to it. Okay? Make sure you have clearly defined goals and objectives, both collectively and individually. When I mean individually, I'm talking about departments. When I'm talking collectively, I'm talking about as a county unit. Okay? Make sure the budget requests reflect these goals. Make sure it's collaborative. Don't leave anybody out. Okay? If somebody perceives that they've been left out, that's going to cause you're going to be causing and trying to fix more problems than if you just included them to begin with. I was always working, and you as fiscal officers and fiscal responsibility will be working 3 budgets at a time. Last year's, this year's, and next year's. Okay? I'm always looking at last year's to see if this year's where we're at, keeping score, what we need to look for next year, and maybe even out 3 to 5 and 7 years. Okay? I always recommend that you cash flow. You cash flow 10 years. Cash flow back 3, current year, 6 years into the future. That will help you with budgeting as well. It'll help you with projections. It will help you also make sure that people understand that, yeah, I'd like to hire 3 new people, but it's just not, I know now that in 3 years I'm not going to be able to do it. Or I could do it now, but in 3 years I'm not going to be able to pay for it. Okay? So make sure you're cash flowing as well. Budget as many of the funds as you can. Okay? One of our initiatives in the legislature this year for the next session is to require you to budget for debt. For the life of me, I don't understand why a unit would not budget their debt, but there are some out there that don't. That is a recipe for disaster. So, budget all your funds. Debt, grants, TIFs, minor funds, non-reverting funds, budget as many of those as you can. It's going to help the people that spend from them. It's also going to help hold them accountable and give you some measure in which to enhance them and show them how well they're doing. Here's some challenges to effective budgeting: lack of engagement. I don't know how many times I've heard, well, I just can't get them to show up for the work session, or I just can't get them to engage. Okay, that's going to be a challenge in some places. Lack of comprehensive and ongoing training. This is not an easy process. And my parks director is a great parks director, but he's not necessarily trained on budget. So I was very purposeful about providing training through the year to my department heads. I love my fire chief and my police chief. I wouldn't trade them for the world, but they were not budget people. Okay? They're great at what they do, but they don't. So understand that this is an ongoing training thing for the department heads. Make sure that you provide clear goals and objectives. If you don't, that's going to be a problem. And then, here it is, Jackie.
Your last slide?
Here's my new, no, it's my new number for additional appropriations.
You're close.
I'm close.
Okay.
Through November 31st, through November 30th, there's no November 31st. Through November 30th. It's up too late doing this. We've had over almost 1,600 requests for additional appropriations to the DLGF. Now, for those of you that don't know, when a county or a taxing unit asks for spending over and above what they have approved in their budget, they have to submit it to my agency for approval on additional appropriation. 1,600 requests at the tune of $1.5 billion. That's been requested to spend that was not budgeted a year ago. I got a problem. That is money that the taxpayer didn't know was going to be spent most of the time. Now, I will tell you that 79 of those requests at $500 million was bond proceeds. I get that. That is a legitimate request for additional appropriation any time of the year. That's legitimate. But asking me to spend $5 because I forgot to add 2 cents to the part-time animal control officer's salary is not a legitimate request for an additional appropriation. It's just not. Okay? So, asking me for an additional appropriations for 19 additional appropriations in January tells me that there's a problem with budgeting in that particular unit. And this is not just county, folks. I'm talking about all, these are for libraries, schools, cities and towns, townships, so forth. This is all of them, because they all come to me. 2,800 units of government, okay? So this is on my radar. As a fiscal officer, I never said no. Never. I just said not now. Not now. Okay. I'm getting the cut off something. I'm on my soapbox, Jackie. You don't want to get up there. Okay. So think about that. Okay. Again, this presentation will be on AIC's website. It'll be on mine. There'll be a link. Jackie, will you send out an email to everybody? Or?
Yes, we're gonna email and tell them where they are.
Okay. Here's the budgeting guide for local government from ICMA. This Institute for Excellence that Jackie and her staff puts on is outstanding. You can go to our DLGF website. Really, in.gov. in.gov will get you to the government website, and then you simply /SBOA, DLGF, IBTR, okay, get it? All right, so that's how you can get to our websites. The phone number on my business card goes right to my cell phone, okay? I'm getting more and more phone calls and emails, which is okay. It was taking me a little bit longer than what it did a year ago to get back with people, but, so, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. I sincerely mean that. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for what you're doing, and we wish you well in your new role.